start policy committee. It's 4:30. Thank you all for coming. So we'll just start with reviewing the responses we received to survey, the survey results for policy 2520 and 2520F. Let's just look over 2520 first. I'm not sure why the Lakeland parents, why non-Lakeland parents would be part of the curriculum committee. Okay, while the policy is good on the surface, I do not agree with requiring at least 50%. Okay, I appreciate the power you are trying to give as parents, but the educators should hold the majority opinion as they are the ones doing the work. Okay, we need to trust the time money. Okay, generally looks good to me. The policy is extremely concerning to me as a teacher. It takes away the ability to adjust instruction on the fly as needed if I have to wait days.
I don't think they actually read
I don't
through
think
the
so.
definitions because
Okay.
it's pretty clear.
Okay, there are many times this year while teaching units and Amplify that something was discussed that didn't provide a lot of background information to my kids' questions. To clear the confusion, I pulled up short video clips so my kids could get a better picture and we could move forward and all the same day. All right. Any use of controversial literacy material would already be okay. The instructional materials policy defies the Charlotte-Danielson framework.
What is that?
Okay, I didn't.
The Danielson
know.
framework is the structure by which teachers are evaluated. One of the categories is being able to adjust instruction and flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the point of this statement, I guess?
Because somebody is not reading that we actually are giving
they didn't.
teachers flexibility, so that's.
So they didn't read
They
back.
did not read the.
Okay.
They just did not, yeah. I think based on what we're doing right now without changing anything, it makes it hard for teachers to show proficiency in 3E, but on the evaluation document.
Okay, wait a minute, what did you just say?
If we did nothing, if we didn't change anything, one of the
Right.
things that teachers are struggling with is.
Okay, but the policy.
But the changes that we
is
made.
changing,
Yes.
right,
Okay.
yeah, so that's why I'm assuming that they didn't
They
read
didn't actually
very-
read what we did.
or at least
They didn't know that.
with
it had been
purpose and like.
changed.
Well, there were some
Okay. They didn't have me explaining, this is good.
Right.
Okay, so, all right. The phrase objecting to specific material used in the district are encouraged to submit a complaint in writing and discuss the complaint with the certified teacher and or building principal. Sounds like you're encouraging parents to complain. Hence the word encouraged, which sounds like you're actively looking for parents to complain about things. And I know you all love a controversy, but let's maybe tone it down a notch. Okay.
I feel like the context,
So-
obviously not knowing who wrote this, but in my mind, I feel like the reason part of that language was there is we're really just encouraging them come to the person directly if there's
Do
a
you have any concerns?
instead of bypassing that, but I mean, they obviously are reading it from a different lens, but I feel like that's why we put it as just encouraging. If parents have a concern, they're coming directly to the teacher or to the librarian.
So in the removal section, I think is where
It was just up
maybe-
there, you just
yeah.
had it right there,
Okay.
encouraged to submit a complaint.
So if you object to your child using a particular instructional material in the classroom, Parental Rights provides a way to request an alternative resource for your child. Individuals objecting to specific materials used in the district are encouraged to submit a complaint in writing. Maybe we should put, instead of a complaint, how about their complaint?
Or their concern if the person doesn't like the word complaint.
They don't like the word encouraged.
Yeah.
Oopsies.
You could use maybe invited, or welcome to.
Or recommend.
Individuals may use or may submit instead of are encouraged to, just put may.
May submit.
In context, though, I mean, I think the word encouraged is as an alternative to,
Yeah.
instead of like, we're just asking that everybody complain. I mean, I think that in context, the word encouraged makes
Is appropriate. I
sense.
feel like
Yeah.
the reason we put it there makes sense, but
Yeah.
I guess just reading it without context. Because the idea was that you're coming directly to the person.
Right.
So maybe we're softening the concern,
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of complaining. Are encouraged to submit their concerns in writing and discuss,
The concern.
the
Oh, very
matter
good.
with the certified teacher or the building principal. If after discussion the individual's concerns have not been addressed, then a formal complaint can be made by completing the form. So basically, we're taking it small, and then if they want to make it bigger, they can.
Yep.
Okay.
This might have been addressed before, and I apologize if this is redundant. Because we're saying if after the discussion the individual's concern have not been addressed, then a formal complaint can be made. Or is there some type of documentation that they would have to say, I've already taken this in an informal way in writing? Or since we're saying only after they've done that step could they do the formal complaint, is there some kind of documentation that they have to say, I've already brought this?
Well, 2520F, request for review and reconsideration of instructional material. So maybe that is like confusing because that's the form they're supposed to complete. So,
I guess the question I have is the way that's worded, I felt like we were encouraging them to do that, but if the parent didn't want to, they could jump straight to the form.
Okay, that's, I was just
Is
reading
what
that
we're
as like,
saying, or is that not what we're saying? Because the way that's how it reads to me. That we're encouraging, we're not requiring, we didn't put on the form
but
a
this is
checklist
if
that
after
said-
discussion, the individual's concerns have not been addressed, so like,
Right.
I'm just wondering if they're gonna
Yeah.
think that they have to do that informal process first before they can
well,
go to
maybe
the form.
the informal process doesn't include writing it down. So if there's an individual objecting to specific material, they're encouraged to discuss the matter with the teacher or the building principal.
So then do we need to take out their in writing
Yeah.
part?
Well, it could just be a note, say, you know, I really want to, I'm really concerned about such and such,
Yeah.
taught, and I want to set up a meeting with you, kind of thing. That, to me, that's what in writing applies. Maybe email, just. jump
It's all
this time.
semantics.
Yeah, it
in the
is.
moment of how you read it.
And even if you write it in this way, you can discuss something via email. There's
Right, we're not-
discussion, so
Right.
it's just not the formal form.
Okay.
So individuals objecting to specific materials are encouraged to, oops,
Share their concerns.
okay. Address their concerns.
You can then take out discuss the matter altogether. Just strike through that. Would you address their
Mhm.
concerns with the
Concerns.
certified teacher, building principal?
You could just take that whole thing out.
Just say, address their concerns directly with the teacher. Or the principal.
The certified teacher or building principal.
Okay.
If after discussion, the individual's concerns have not been addressed, then a formal complaint can be made by completing Form 2520F. Request for review and reconsideration. Which request, a complaint?
It's a
Okay.
wordy
Request for review.
title of a form.
Yes.
Do we need a period at the end of that? Maybe.
What?
Mhm.
Why would we have a period at the
Where
end
are
of
we
a
at?
sentence?
Materials.
Oh,
I
say that a lot.
Just making sure.
okay.
curricular materials, adoption committee. What community input is being sought here and how does it compare to the value being brought by teachers professional, non-qualified evaluation? As needed.
That part's the
For
law,
what?
we can't change it.
Yeah.
Supplemental materials. This will mean kids get a worse education. If all materials need to be approved and has an anticipated turnaround or 6 weeks or more, teachers are going to be unable to help struggling students. Documents. Supplemental materials approval process, some kind of timeline needs to be established, and the materials can be expected to be reviewed. Okay, so
And I would say currently the timeline is 4 weeks, so like this week, we had the board meeting last week, right? Is it already last week? Yep.
Mhm.
And I sent it out this week, and then we'll have up until the next board meeting, so it's actually three weeks. 3.5, whatever, I mean, I send it out right after it's been approved by the board. I send out the new one to the supplemental curriculum, and then it gets approved, and then I alert all of the principals and some of the teachers, depending on if they directly email me or not, the night of the board meeting that it's been approved.
And there's nothing on backlog that like wouldn't have, like there's no backlog of like this hasn't been able to be looked at yet or anything.
A month ago I would have said no, but now that some of the novel sets are being looked at, we are, because I would just
Right.
overwhelm it. But aside from that, no. If
Okay.
they give it to me, I've never not included. Now, sometimes people think they sent it to a principal and it never got to me, so I
Okay.
didn't get it.
That's what I was gonna
And
ask
so
you.
I have
Yeah.
told the principals this. Some of the principals, we talked about this on Wednesday, some of them said, well, I would like to review it first, but I have a lot of teachers that reach directly out to me and
Okay.
and just say, and the only thing I request is that you have the link, because there could be a title of something and there's 5 different versions of that. I need to know which one you want.
Okay.
So I would tell you most of the secondary people email me immediately, and they directly email me. Some of the elementary go to the principal, and it doesn't matter to me. If you send it to me,
Okay.
I literally, I get the email, I put it on I already have August already started, even though I'm just,
Okay.
we're still just in June, because I just sent out the July, so if I had somebody email me today, so I've already started, I do it immediately for the next round.
Okay.
But people will email me next week and go, I want this on the July
I like
roll.
that.
Well, I
You
just
can't,
so
because
it looks like
already
there
went
must
out
be
to the committee.
some of the. It makes me wonder if the wheels have fallen off somewhere else for. I mean, like I had heard staff say I've been waiting 7 months for something. So somewhere the wheels have fallen off and it's
Yeah.
not necessarily in
If it
in your
comes to
yeah.
me, then I put
Okay.
it on immediately. And I feel like for those of you that have sent stuff to me, I feel like it's,
I think the
Okay.
biggest issue this year, especially at the secondary level, was specific to our drama department and the inability to get plays approved in a timely fashion in
Okay.
order to be able to teach the class. But I think
Okay.
that's a work in progress, just based upon that particular subject
Okay.
matter.
well, because the issue was she wanted it faster than that month. She wanted to do it and wanted it by 2, and I can't, it is, again, if somebody sends me something right now, I just sent out the July list and I can't add anything to it. So I feel like it could feel longer, I'm not gonna be able to put it on till August, cause if you don't get it to me, and so I
Right.
feel like I've said that to the principals, you have to get it to
Okay.
me by that board meeting for the next month, otherwise
So if somebody says they've been waiting for months or whatever, they just need to reach out to you and figure out where it went.
yeah,
Okay.
because the other piece is,
where they've looked at it and had questions, so it's gone back because they need more information, or they're like,
Okay.
they need something more specific because it's such a broad website, or whatever, they're like, are they using the whole thing, or they, so I
right,
don't.
but I even have
sometimes-
a list of stuff that's been tabled, and I have a list of stuff that's been denied for
Okay.
our supplemental, but sometimes I will send it out and I'll say, hey, this has been approved, if it funneled through the librarian, if it funneled through the principal or whatever, and then people will come back, 2 months later and ask me, and I'm like, this was approved,
Okay.
and it's on the list.
Gotcha,
And
yeah.
so, I mean,
Okay.
That
I
makes
think
sense.
there's
It has been
Yeah.
challenged and the
Okay,
challenges.
thank
are
you.
Correct me if I'm
other-
behind the curve here too.
Okay.
I know a point of concern, especially as we were coming into May and June, was the volume of material that the board would have to approve before the upcoming school year. Do we have any more information about
well,
that?
that's what
this.
all of this is about,
Okay.
yeah. So,
So the answer to your question is if the board approves the changes that we're recommending, then all of your papers, no, those are all learning materials.
but
So-
the novel sets that have been.
Yeah, your
part
novel
of
sets
our-
have to be approved.
So those, and you know, like, I can't put 100 books on there, I mean,
Right.
nobody
So
would be able to,
It's a
so
plan.
that will be, that could be delayed because I don't have, I can't
And that no
overwhelm
longer
the
needs to be
committee
approved.
with, so I have a limit of how many books I'll put on there, then I just feel
I
like
know
it's.
you'd asked the English departments to kind of suss out when we anticipate being able to read those. Is that gonna go as anticipated? Okay.
I mean, I'm hoping, yeah.
The challenge
it's
board
has been challenged. So we're saying it may be removed. Yeah, because,
It's been challenged and,
well, because it's saying may be removed. It's not saying it's going to be removed. It's saying it may be removed.
right, but I think the point was just because it was challenged doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be removed, it has to go through that process. I think that's what they're asking is what's the, I get the may right there, but.
Right,
Yeah.
so, but what they're saying is,
I do have a question.
it's not mean it needs to be removed. That's correct, which to me is by saying it may be removed, it also means it may not.
It's been challenged and reviewed and found to be something.
Right, but the word may at the beginning means that any one of those might happen, but they, not necessarily.
Well, then I think
I
we
would
should
say has been
change
challenged
to
and
will,
reviewed.
because instructional material will be removed when the material no longer meets criteria, is worn out, or has been challenged and determined to be removed, or deemed, whatever.
Yeah. Inappropriate for
Yeah.
Challenge reviewed.
public
and
school students.
Deemed.
Because then that's explaining when it will happen.
Right, yeah.
Challenged and deemed, what was that?
Inappropriate.
Okay.
Does it look like, is there a period
There's a
in
period
between?
here.
There's one between deemed and inappropriate, it looks like, I can't tell for sure.
There is a period in between those two words.
Dean was extra functional.
Instead of bolding, underlining, and
No,
italicizing.
that's the new end of the sentence, so it'll need a period.
There was, it's at the end of the struck out sentence, yeah.
Okay, so that clarifies or cleans that up some.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
I was just, before we move further in, I'm just curious about the word supplant.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that too.
Because supplant in my means you are completely
Replace.
replacing, which
Right.
supplemental doesn't always necessarily do that.
But you do,
That's
so the reason, how we got to that was you have an anthology through, Amplified, CKLA. And instead of doing the unit that you would be doing, you're going to do a novel, so you're supplanting that unit in the core textbook with a novel instead. That would be supplemental. If you're using worksheets, if you're, the things that you use to extend that learning would not have to go through the supplemental process because they're now identified as learning materials. So we were trying to figure out how to really differentiate between core curriculum and what is supplemental. And so when you look at, so like BOAC supplants the phonics in the program. So that's how we got there.
So I appreciate this. I try to watch or go to as many meetings as I can, and I missed the last meeting, and I feel like
that's probably where some of these comments are coming from,
Mhm.
because even though it's spelled out here, I did not,
The context, it's the semantics of it.
yes,
Yeah.
so I think that's where
Mhm.
a
So we
lot
talked
of,
to the principals about
I
it
read
too, of
this,
just trying for them to understand that we're saying core goes through the adoption process, and again, a lot of the comments in there, the law is the law,
Yeah.
like it
Yeah,
is what it
yeah,
is,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you can't change that. And then the supplemental is truly, it is supplanting something.
Mhm.
So again, if you were using, when we are, K2 uses really great reading, most of them are supplanting that with, the phonics portion or the phonological component of Amplify. And so it's truly, they're not using some of they're replacing it, so we're like, that will go through the supplemental, that'll go through the approval process. But if it's just enhancing or enriching what you're already doing and it's an extension of that, then that's just learning material, and that's how we were trying to it's a win on all fronts.
right, yeah, no, I like this, but it was an interesting conversation I had with another teacher. When she read this, she read it for what it said. When I read it, I had all those other previous
Right.
meetings in the back of my mind, and the board meeting that said we were meeting with the board, and so I'm like, that hasn't happened yet. So I was just all sorts of confused, but that teacher read it for what it was, and so
Well, we
that
did
was
bring, Michelle did bring it up to the board, the discussion, or it was Lisa, or both of them discussed bringing it up as kind of having a workshop, and Trustee Jones is the one that just said, no, I think it should go back to policy and add more, so we did bring it up to talk about it, and then it was come back here, and then how, I think that there was some guidance too, to talk to
He
the
was,
attorney.
yeah, he
No,
was.
it's good. It's just I can't keep up with all of this and all the
It was
decisions.
quick, it was quick,
I'm
it was
trying
quick.
to-
We went from one to
trying to watch
yeah.
as many as I
Yeah.
can to keep up. So I feel like this is really good stuff. So I thank you.
Okay. That was gonna be my question to you. Do you understand it, or do you need
I
more
do
words?
now. I had preconceived knowledge or preconceived because I had been to several of the meetings, and so this has
Right.
changed a lot since then, and I do appreciate
So
it.
one of the ideas that got thrown out, last time we talked, and then somebody made this suggestion, is the basis of that paragraph is supplanted, so do we just change it to supplanted materials? But I remember
I
I'm
think
the one
we
that
need
shot
to
it down last
say
time, so I'm like, that's not
supplemental
really a word.
because- Right, and I think we need to
I
say
don't know.
supplemental, cause that's what we're all used to, and we have a supplemental.
Committee.
Well, that was my argument last time, so.
And then I think it's just clarifying to our colleagues what learning materials fall under.
That are not board approved or that do not need board approved.
That don't require board
on
approval?
learning
It's all
materials.
of the
Okay,
above.
before we go there, let's work out supplant.
But I think
So,
That's a reasonable one.
Supplant and supplement are different words that mean different things. I think this is inconsistent as written.
okay,
Supplant to me means take the place of.
it does.
Which is
Right.
And that's what we were
exactly what
meaning.
we're
Supplement
talking
means
about.
use in addition to.
In addition to,
Yeah,
yeah.
so,
So should we call it alternate curricular materials?
or just
Yeah,
say
supplemental
supplemental
materials.
materials are materials used to supplement the curricular materials.
But
But when you do that, then it bleeds into learning materials,
right.
which is why we
That's why we
land
use
on
Which is why I
supplant.
said, do you just call it supplanted, or do you call it alternative? Cause if you are
If you're
gonna, to Nate's
replacing.
point, if you're
Mhm.
interchanging those two words, then it's confusing.
suggestions, Nate?
I think it should be called supplanting materials. I can Google that and see if it's a word.
It is a word,
Okay.
because supplant is a verb.
You're agreeing with me, Nate?
Is that what you argued for before?
Well, I argued against it last time and this.
That's what I thought. I thought it was actually not agreeing.
Okay, my concern is for the last 3 to 4,
Yeah.
maybe even 5 years, we have been hammering supplemental, supplemental,
Yeah.
supplemental, supplemental.
Yep.
So my concern is throwing supplant and everyone's going, well, what about the supplemental?
Yeah, where did it go?
So if we call it in an effort to change the terminology, supplant materials, but bracket supplemental, so people can kind of see, because some of us may not be that smart to understand that, but supplant materials are any materials used to,
Or in the place of, so we
are
don't,
used.
in the place of.
I would say in the place. You could even say supplemental materials are used, any materials used to, in place of adopted curriculum materials.
I still feel like that leaves the word supplement being incorrectly used, because it doesn't mean like in addition to, it doesn't mean replacing.
So,
I hear what you're saying, but I'm, unless we have bullet point under supplant materials to state supplemental materials are no longer in the district. I mean, it's just, we have all of these employees that are familiar with supplemental material. And,
Well, and our supplemental curriculum committee.
right,
That are
Well, and
parent
supplemental
level.
is,
So-
in addition, it's just additional materials that are approved, that are not part of core. I mean, they are additional,
They are.
they're just
so you
used
could,
for core
so you could say that
instructional.
supplemental materials are additional board-approved materials used in place of.
Core instructional.
And then you are, to Nate's point, using the definition of supplemental.
okay. Say that again.
So any board of, any additional board-approved materials used in place of.
So you can take off, so is are any additional?
Any additional.
Hang on a second though, because up here, we're not even talking about curricular materials being board approved. So should we
Oh, yeah, that
delineate
should-
within the definitions,
Yes.
everything that's board approved?
Absolutely.
All right.
So what about up above that though, that, where it said that paragraph that said supplemental materials, before the definitions, was that, might be in the wrong place.
Well, because we go into it in fine
Yeah,
detail down below.
definitions are at the start.
But down below is when we talk about the approval process, so that's why.
But I think it makes sense to put it in the definition, so it's crystal clear.
Oh, that's where we were talking about. That's where I was starting at. I mean, it was used twice, so I started at the beginning.
Supplemental materials are in,
Being,
thank you. Used, in place of curriculum materials, including instructional. So, materials used in place of curricular materials, including all of that. Years instruction that have been approved by the Board of Trustees. Learning materials are all other materials,
You want to just put that are not required to be board approved or do not go through the.
that are not used
Not
as a
board
sole or
approved.
primary instructional material by the district certified teaching staff. These materials are used to complement enrich
and they're not required.
and
And do not require board
have not been approved by the Board of Trustees.
Have not been or do not need to be unless review has been requested through the form?
Well, I think that's a whole lot of words. If we say they have not been approved, then if someone's wanting to challenge them, then it would go through the process and then end up being approved, which would then pop it up into supplemental.
This
So-
makes it seem that teachers are trying to sneak it under.
I agree, it does.
Okay.
The way it's written.
Right, it's very vague. I think this is a very vague definition.
Okay, input?
So the way it's written, it looks to me like this is just everything that is not curriculum. That's what it looks like to me. Is that the intention? Because if that's the intention, it should.
Well, no,
stay there.
because it wouldn't be used if it wasn't curricular, that's the point. So, I mean, we can put in there that it's part of the curriculum, well, I don't know how we would word that, but the whole purpose behind this particular definition was so that we, and it says right here, are used to complement, enrich, and or extend the content of curricular materials. So everything that we do in the classroom is tied to curriculum. Any activity worksheet, handout, website, whatnot, would be used to complement, enrich, or extend the content of curriculum. So it does talk about curriculum, and that's what the whole purpose of that is for. So I don't know how to make it more detailed, but I think the vagueness of it is meant so that, once again, we can have that flexibility.
I think what we're trying to get away from is the need to have tens of thousands of worksheets approved through the supplemental curriculum committee because we've been using them in the district for 10 years. And so, and that allows teachers to make decisions in the moment with kids when they're looking at their 25 kiddos and they're not understanding with the way it's being presented, and they need to be able to show it in a different way or give them an alternate activity with it. And they're right now they're limited on being able to do that. So that's the intent of that paragraph.
So I feel like you guys are actually agreeing that this is basically everything that is not curriculum. Is that the case?
No, it's still
all
curriculum. It's not adopted curriculum materials.
It's
So
not
the word
curriculum
curriculum is
though,
being
it
used
can't
in
be.
two different senses then here?
It can't be curriculum, because if it is curriculum, it has to be approved by the board. Way back in the beginning, when I said, please describe to me what learning materials is, no one could come up with a definitive definition that wasn't curriculum. But the board, Bob specifically, does not want to have a workshop to hear the teaching staff's side, and believes that everybody should just be able to use their materials that they have, that they've acquired, that they've accumulated over the years, and teach students, which I do agree with. The struggle is being bound by the law that if there's teaching learning materials that are taught as curriculum, those materials need to be approved. So if you put it under the umbrella that it's all other materials, not instructional materials, so it's other materials that aren't of the instructional nature, which, I mean, a worksheet on how to enhance what you're learning in math based off of AI that created it, that's not curriculum to me.
May I?
Go ahead.
So how I might describe it is we have a particular math curriculum that is purchased, that's what you're going to teach your 5th grade class. But then you realize you get a group of 5th graders and holy Hannah, they can't tell time. So that's not part of the curriculum that is has been purchased as this set, that this is what you're going to teach the 5th grade math, but you realize that your kids have a gap. And so this material might be, you're going to, put together some worksheets that have some extra practice on telling time. So it's just not, so curriculum as the district maybe describing it is what they have purchased as the set assigned for this topic in this grade, but might not have all the pieces to address weaknesses or gaps that we didn't anticipate. Is that fair?
Yes.
Right, so how we talked about it originally is curricular materials was defined as our core. So whatever our adoption process is our core. Supplemental would be anything that was gonna supplant the core, it has to go through the approval process. Anything that is enhancing that's not comprehensive in nature, if it's comprehensive in nature, you're supplanting, so that goes through the approval process. If it's something that's enriching, then it's just a learning material that you're using to enhance what you're doing. So the idea is that 2 and 3 are more comprehensive, it's supplanting, you are using it as your core base. 4 is you're using it as, it's a tiny tool that you're using to enhance what the core base you feel like is missing.
Now,
That's how we
not
talked about
wanting
it.
to travel down the slippery slope, but I will go there. I think it's, I don't know, it's social studies or whatnot, but where we don't have a curriculum, we have just opened Pandora's box for everything to be taught to kids without any review.
Well, I don't see
Which
that.
I'm not saying that's going to
Standards.
happen,
Right.
but
And I guess to me, I would say that's where 3 comes in. If you're
Okay.
using it as your core, it's all about the intent. If it is,
Okay.
so we have teachers that 100% are still using their old 20-year-old textbooks, right? they're beat up, they're broke, but they like what's in them. And then you have some people that are like, oh, I found something else that's a little bit better. At the moment your intent is it is your base, it either falls under 2 or 3.
And as we were talking, I was thinking, that's exactly what I was thinking of, because I
Okay.
wrote a unit on the Oregon Trail
Okay.
to replay. Well, I also do the Oregon Trail part in my book, but I also wrote a big unit for that.
Okay.
And I was thinking that I need to get that approved. So I think if we're gonna have to do a good job
It's
making
the
sure it's very
intent behind how
clear
you're
to
using the material.
I
If
think
you
if
are
we're clear to
truly,
staff, though.
if you're using it as a core curriculum in place of something else, then it has to go through the approval process. And I guess I would say, and then if it's a challenge material, it probably needs to, you know, the same thing, but it really is about enhancing, so it goes back to that intent.
So with regard to the social studies, as Lynn's working with the teams to build their instructional calendars for social studies, and they identify that we're gonna use this unit, this material for this topic. If it's in there and the expectation is everybody's using it, then that, in my mind, that has to come through the supplemental curriculum process, because that's what we're using. That is becoming
And
the
I
core.
will tell you, in meeting with the K-5 team this year, and we mostly did ELA and math, but even when we recognize those, for instance, Amplify, in my opinion, and I think all the K2 teachers would agree, that does not do it, they don't do a great job with phonological. So we have Haggerty in place of that. And it's been a program we've had forever. It was approved, but there were things like that. So like iReady, some of our teams do not feel like it does a great job spiraling through some of those key math concepts. So if we as a team said this is going to be the spiraling component, the idea is that it all comes to the board. So we literally pulled up what was approved, like, okay, somebody saw this, they really liked it, have we taken it through the approval process? So I feel like if it's going to go on our pacing guide, we're saying we're asking you to use it, it goes through the supplemental curriculum.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So again, it's back to that intent. If we're saying that this is supplanting because we're seeing a weakness in our adoption, because that's going to be the case across the board. There's no one size fits all in everything. So if we're recognizing in our pacing guides there's a weakness, we have brought it, we're bringing it, we put it on the supplemental curriculum for approval. And I literally have told people, this is what we're going to use, but we have to wait until it goes, we have board approval on it, and then I'll let you know. I mean, I literally have notes on there like I'm taking this, and I mean I've taken all that off because all of it's been approved, but that's how we do it. If it goes on our pacing guide, it goes through the approval process. So we're not adding like random worksheets that wouldn't be approved.
So if the teacher's gonna use a novel, it's
It
going to
would
be
be
approved.
board approved.
But if they're gonna, use a specific novel study that maybe they've found through another resource rather than creating their own, would they need to bring that through? Or if they create their own, like you created your own unit, I think so often teachers have a novel and with it they create their own materials for whatever it is that, because every novel is different angle. Like
Right.
our focus is gonna be character or plot, or so if you're focusing on one piece, my materials could be different than someone else's because you're using it with a different, so does that then mean the novel's approved, but the materials that they're creating to with it also need to be?
I think, well, what we have talked about in the past, and Michelle can chime in, but what we have talked about is that if you're creating lessons or units directly from the board approved textbook as an extension of that, and you're not going out to read works and pulling in a whole bunch of text that they're going to read, or you're not going out and finding a bunch of video clips or whatever, it's truly just
I think you said
building
enhance
it,
and extend.
then those worksheets and that kind of stuff does not have to come to the board, because you're just building off of the adopted curriculum. But as soon as you're going out, especially the narrative, if you're going out and gathering,
Getting articles about the Oregon
those,
Trail.
yeah, those need to be approved.
Yeah.
I think the last sentence, it says here, to complement, enrich, or extend the content of curricular materials, is like it would have originally said in the last draft.
Well, that's what it says right there. Are all the materials that are used to complement, enrich.
Oh,
and-
yes, sorry.
Okay, but what I'm trying to do is,
Just a little bit of
to balance this out,
And I
because
wouldn't-
if they're, go ahead.
I would say instead of worksheets, it would be materials. This includes materials, because it could be a variety of things.
I think she's trying to, up above, we have, this includes blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. She's trying to kind of give a little bit of context for the community about what that might include.
Well, I think we just need to give context as a whole, because, I mean, it doesn't state anywhere on there that if the learning material then is actually part of the pacing guide, then it falls, I mean, there's.
Because then we're back to supplanting at that point.
Right, and so if we put that little caveat
I
there.
think that's perfect.
But then I also want teachers to feel supported that if they're on the fly and they have to pull a worksheet because Johnny's not really getting the concept of XYZ, and they believe that this worksheet that they've had in their file cabinet for 40 years is going to help Johnny learn the concept of XYZ, that they can pull it out and use it and not think they're going to be fired. Because that's just been going on for way too long. So I'm trying to figure out language to put to support what I keep hearing is the original content or the original context of learning materials. But you know, if we want to keep going out into the weeds,
We'll never
it's-
finish this policy.
we're not going to, and
Want
it's
this to be the
And I
last
would love to be
meeting.
the
Yeah.
last meeting.
Curriculum?
I want to move on.
right. So
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think giving examples like this would include worksheets or something, because without understanding like the difference between core and supplemental and interventions and that kind of thing, it is super confusing for somebody to just read and be like,
well, and I never
Yeah, I agree.
identified.
Examples, I think examples would help a lot.
Well, I never
Newspaper
identified
articles?
curriculum as standards.
Like
I
newspaper articles or something?
identified curriculum as curricular materials.
Right.
So that's new to me, but,
The other piece that I think will be super important is kind of like that list that we have at the beginning of the school year. This policy needs to be added, so it's super clear what we're
right.
with teachers and
It's
so.
like even at the beginning of the year.
Right. We have that list that we have the admin check off for policies to go over, so this will be what needs to be
Utilize.
added.
This includes but is not limited to.
You want me to speak?
Yep. Extended.
I'll
learning.
stand next to you.
Thanks.
You're back.
I'm just throwing words out there. Anyone can chime in and help write this, please.
I'm gonna apologize because I want to do, or go back to some of the semantics. Have not been approved by the Board of Trustees makes it sound as if teachers are
Do not need.
flying in face of the board. I wonder if different language might be more appropriate there, like
Or
do not
not.
require pre-approval from the board. That still leaves it open that it could require approval eventually, but it doesn't require pre-approval.
True, but I would, my purpose of stating have not been approved is that's crystal clear. The board has not weighed in on the topic.
Well, and I think at the last meeting too, I had issues with that same language, and it was discussed by Lisa that that was language that was suggested by the lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. We've already changed that language from what it was to what it now says. So there was a reason that we used that language. I didn't like it either, but it was what it was.
Okay.
So would it help if it says, to meet all the needs, so all of the materials that are used to complement, enrich, or extend the content of curricular materials that have not been approved by the board, but are not required, or something? Do you want it to say both? Haven't been approved but are not required to be approved?
I would. What do you all think?
I thought, yeah, just to add in there, all other materials that are not board approved, maybe in parentheses, and are not required, and board approval isn't required, are these ones that are used to complement, enrich, extend the content. Because it does seem to imply that, oh, well, so we're just using other stuff. It's that recognition that we are using other things out of necessity, but not supplanting.
And not trying to sneak around.
Yeah. And maybe that's from that sense of before we did feel like, oh my gosh, I have to get this multiplication paper approved before I need it right now or tomorrow. And maybe it's just a residual sense.
I guess for me.
But also anyone else looking at this would say, oh, okay, there are certain things that the teachers use day to day.
Okay, but I guess for me, what I struggle with is by law, the board is required to approve everything that's utilized in instructing students. In the eyes of the law, everything is curriculum. Now, we are trying to find a workaround by utilizing the term learning materials, because it does not make sense that, you know, worksheets or materials used to help the students learn a deeper, richer understanding of the content that's being taught is, you know, there doesn't need to be micromanaging. But the reality is it's all supposed to be approved. So that's why if we take the caveat that if something is going to be consistently used, well, then we're going to roll that under supplemental and it's going to require board approval. If it's something on the fly that you all need because you're like, he's just not getting it, but I know if I go teachers pay teachers and I can pull this one sheet and it's going to nail it, then I can go do that. So, I mean, I don't know how to balance that. Just, you know, I'm just the committee person today. I'm here with that. But respectfully, it's super challenging because the board is required to approve it. But we're finding a workaround so that all of the years of experience of qualified individuals that have been teaching forever and a day and have passed on the torch, that all of that is still free to be used. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to say it's, you know, are not required to be approved means that you're removing the board of its duty, which is not the goal of this. It's the fact that it hasn't been approved by the board and we're aware of it. So if it becomes a problem, then it has to be approved by the board. That's why there's a challenge procedure, because if a parent's saying, hey, I think this crosses lines here, I want someone to look at this, well, then we just need to run it through the procedure so that the board can approve it and say, no, we agree this is being taught in the district. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is giving some leash, but
Yes.
but there's probably no way to verbalize all of that in the policy. These are just conversations that, but we're gonna just have to have a lot of conversations
But I
with
think
staff and
to
community.
Shane's point, if that we have a list of policies that principals are supposed to go over, but Shana is saying, you know, like it might be something where Lisa gets in front of the whole staff and just kind of talks through this so people have an understanding and you're hearing it from everybody, because I agree, it's to capture all of this is really difficult. So
It
there needs
is.
to be, but I also feel like this is, and I wrote it down, this is one of those policies where everybody needs to be crystal clear, because I guess I would even say, even if it's at some point, you know, there could be a tool that you guys are using that is truly on the fly, but then people are recognizing it's really valuable and it's making a huge impact, and then they want to add it to the pacing guide. Well, the moment it does that, we're going through the approval process. So knowing that there could be things that on the fly you're using, but at some point, if it becomes vetted enough where the rest of the team is like, this is quality and it's better than what we might be using, then we're talking about supplanting again, and it would go through the approval process.
I would encourage you to have those meetings not only with the building principals but with all their leadership and include the SPED teachers, because I think if anybody has to pull
the
it.
whole staff.
No, but I mean, like, but then to
In
have like some
addition.
small groups where there's
Yeah.
more time for Q&A or whatever, but
Mhm.
but that might really help to kind of get it.
Yeah. Yep.
So it includes worksheets.
Presentations that teachers have
We
created.
can add to the agenda the curriculum meetings at the beginning of the
Would
school
stuff
year.
like newspaper,
I
like
think
today's
just because
newspaper,
that
be
always has
included
the whole
here?
intervention stuff, and so
Current-
that would really
current
make
event,
a
current event.
big
Yeah.
a big difference for them
Documents.
in that flexibility to pull.
Whether it's
Yeah.
in a video, newspaper, video.
Yeah, she just put current events.
Mm-hmm.
an event material.
Can we add this includes but is not limited to? Or is that gonna be too much?
Or just examples would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know what else to call them.
That's fine.
I don't know, long-standing support document.
Those are
So,
things
like,
we've had
worksheets
for
that
20
people
years
have
in
that
the
we
filing
don't-
cabinet.
Yeah, we don't know where
That
this
we
came
don't
from
ever
support,
throw
but
away.
they're good stuff.
We've got lots of
Long-standing
support.
documents?
Yep.
Classic. Antique documents.
Vintage.
Vintage, there you go.
That's the cooler word they see.
So my kids tell me.
Doesn't make me feel any younger though.
Any of your students hit you with born in the 1900s yet?
Oh, yeah. So did they even have TV when you were a kid?
Okay.
I was the ladies' teacher.
So are you?
Does that sound more plausible?
I think something along the lines of, so last time I spoke, maybe I wasn't clear, I felt like everyone responded and they were all agreeing. That 4 basically describes materials that are not curricular materials. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that should probably be added, learning materials or materials that are not curricular materials.
It's all other materials.
Well, it does say that it covers the content of curriculum materials.
Right, but he's trying to differentiate between the things up above that are board approved and what these are, so.
That are not.
And are used.
I would say but are
Are.
used. I would say but are used.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't need an R in there?
Hmm?
Are, and if we're missing
But
an
are used or no?
Oh,
That-
I just, I don't know.
but used, you know. They heard but used.
Actually,
Toilet
like
paper.
it. Less is more.
Okay, so learning materials are not curricular materials, but are used to complement, enrich, or extend the content of curricular materials and have not been approved by the Board of Trustees. Examples include worksheets, presentations, current event materials, long-standing documents, etc., used to support the extended learning of topics. Seems kind of redundant, but I think we're.
I think there's a little more clarity.
Actually, I could just say, I could take that off.
pasted that to the next page.
The examples include but are not limited to, or is that redundant?
Well, that's why they gave examples as opposed to include.
We had that on there and we took it off.
Et cetera. Plus we have et cetera.
Et cetera.
Which
Love et cetera.
covers
Do
everything.
you wanna keep learning materials that are required as a separate line, or do you wanna embed it in number 4? Since it's all part of learning materials? Or do you want it to be a
Okay.
standout? I don't care either way, I just,
It may be
it
better
definitely stands out
as,
this way.
it does,
Mhm.
but the point is that they're required to be used as part of the pacing guide. So that there's a caveat, I mean, it's, people understand,
That makes sense.
okay. Does that make? Nate, any comments?
It's clear enough that I won't object further.
Okey-doke. Oh, wait, I need to go back. Alright, supplemental materials are any materials used, as curricular materials. Cause we got rid of, or we changed, we took supplant out up here.
Oh, instructional
In place
materials,
of.
Yeah. Where was that?
right there.
Okay. Alright, so I think that clears that. Oh, go
Can we
ahead.
go right back, to Delaney's point, so where it says supplemental materials approval process, if you scroll down, would it be worthwhile that we put a timeline right there? Cause it doesn't, I mean, people talked about it being really long, so would it be worthwhile that, somewhere in there we put that it's it goes
It's a
out,
4-week process.
we have our board meetings the second week of the month, so the supplemental curriculum list goes out the third week of the month. And then it's open until the following board meeting, would it?
You could just say like the general turnaround time is approximately 4
Is
weeks.
it
I mean,
worthwhile
just-
to put that on
I would
there?
say approximately 4 weeks.
Cause again, it's only as good as when it gets to me.
Sure, yeah.
You know, unless I am inundated with 20, 50 things, then obviously I do first come, first serve, and.
But that at least
and I
tells
will
them
tell
what
people,
to
I
expect.
put this on the August one, or I put this on the da-da-da, or
Yeah.
da-da-da, whatever.
And I think they said approximately, just depending
Do I
on.
just send the whole unit electronically with all
How the
the
months
links, and
fall.
then they would
Yeah.
click on the links and read the articles and stuff?
So, I guess, should I keep general in there? It seems kind of, the general turnaround time for the approval process is approximately 4 weeks.
You could probably take general out, because you have approximately then on the
Right.
other end.
Somebody made that comment about the timeline, so.
Do you wanna read the top of her?
No.
And then in this, I did put teachers submit it to me, I do know that there are some buildings that like to look at that, and we just kinda said that's an internal deal, but, if I don't
You
get
could-
it.
Mhm.
Okay. So is that enough of a turnaround time? I mean, a
Yeah.
identifier, qualifier, whatever.
At least they know if they've been waiting 7 months, something
Then they
went wrong.
should-
They might need to
cut
check
something-
something
something
out.
somewhere.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I could have dropped the ball, but I don't typically on
I
that, but.
She's
I
usually
think
pretty
there's
good.
there's probably
Did we correct that? I think we did. Under C.
Well, duly noticed is talking about the, board meeting, the subcommittee meeting.
Wait, what? Where are you duly noticing?
Well, that's the only place we would, so is there any place in here that talks about the, curriculum
Where?
committee?
the one that had mentioned it to me, the context of that. I don't think she sent it to you.
Well, I mean,
So I don't.
yeah, you could
don't
miss it for
don't
sure.
get-
Oh,
I don't know if we had I think it might be up under, the curriculum committee. If there is, right there. No, it doesn't even say anything, so I don't know where else they would have had that, unless it was in a different policy.
Okay.
Further under curriculum materials, it's the first,
Oh, up here.
first blue one at the end of that paragraph. it
Oh,
says
duly noticed. That's how it's supposed to be that's the legal language for when we post a board meeting.
Okay.
And we already dealt with that other part.
Okay. Okay, this is not realistic and an insult to the teachers. Teachers are educated, have the experience or knowledge to determine what supplemental material is best and appropriate to incorporate. While teaching, there are many teach-to moments that cannot always be planned for, but can easily be incorporated. How can teachers have those to teach moments help with any misunderstanding or really ensure prior knowledge if teachers are not allowed to quickly alter their instruction to match their students' needs? Okay, we've already taken care of that. I don't think there's enough specificity around learning materials. We took care of that. Okay. Supplemental materials.
There's a comment about the turnaround time.
What is turnaround? Okay, so we took care of that. Okay. It is excessive to require a supplemental material approval process for every possible audio or video under 5 minutes. But we're not.
Well, this, so.
I think we, a ton of.
It's actually the opposite of that.
Right, yep.
That's the gist of most of the comments. I mean, it's the same for 25-20. I feel like we've fixed that.
Okay, teachers use variety to enrich adopt curriculum is not enough. None of it seems impossible. Okay, we're not.
Took care of that one.
Okay, so
And
now
I would say
going
most
to
of 20F is the same.
There was one, maybe fourth to last, that just on one of the F ones said that there was just it needed a relation to parent, relation to student or something.
Okay. Let's see here.
That was the only one I saw that wasn't just like feedback stuff, that it was just.
This is a comment about the law, I think.
Alright, parents who want to have something reconsidered that was not approved. I'm still displeased that SOS was discontinued, and I think the supplemental resource committee, but they didn't. Okay. Just for teachers, you should too. Okay. I think we should change. Have you examined the entire resource? If not, what section did you review? Into 2, okay. Alright, so, okay, so they're saying 2.
Like, I'm reading that as they want it to be disqualified if you didn't read the entire resource and you don't get to lodge the complaint, but.
It does ask that, have you examined the entire resource?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're just saying they think it should be 2 questions instead of 1.
Oh. I see.
It's working. Content knowledge may be not disclosed.
They're saying they could just say this is the part I read and not say I read it in its entirety.
I mean, you can read 4 pages of something that are
And you
pretty
have-
clearly not okay without reading the 300-page, you know. So,
And remember, we're making.
I mean,
this
context is
form,
important, but I
so
think
we
there's
don't have to
times
worry
where.
about formatting this.
Okay.
All 3 of the
so-
forms that we'll use, I'll make them fillable. So if we make any adjustments, that we don't have to worry about formatting or adding lines or anything.
Okay. So we're asking them if they did. If they didn't, what did they review? Okay. Seems reasonable. Teachers must have autonomy when selecting materials that correspond to the lesson plans
already approved novel sets. All right, these policies are necessary. Well, unfortunately, they're not. They depreciate teachers and define what teachers should be able to do in the classroom. They also say they still have stress. Okay, reasonable process. Children, we are meeting within the district have serious social and family disruptions. Accompanying her to support increasing emotional and mental health.
This is Henry.
Yeah.
Youth policy.
Okay. Library materials differ from instructional materials and should not be included on this form. Oh, okay. Library materials are specific. These items should be looked at. The original policy looked fine. This new wording feels as if the board needs to take control of every aspect of learning. They shouldn't.
You're actually using this to give up a little bit.
Yeah, they're not educators, but any stretch of the imagination. Why all of a sudden you feel a need for at least half the committee? Well, that's the law. Okay. There is no way all materials will be able to be reviewed and approved in a timely manner. I feel as some of the best teaching comes in the moment. Alright, I believe we should be able to trust our teachers. Can you trust your teachers? Okay. Can the request for review and reconsideration be denied? On a side note, Towards provides a way to request an alternative resource. Should have been provided in this email for easy access and parental review. However, if learning materials are provided only in the classroom, it would be too late to request a review. Okay, so what's the ID is going to push school choice through. I encourage the district to provide more transparency, otherwise you will be. Alright, thank you. The request, okay, for review is good, if good, okay. Like the fact that you asked if they want, to the teacher, okay. One also needs to have the requester's relationship to the student. What is happening? It seems we don't trust the teachers you hire to do the job. Faith in educating our children seems to be given to those without specialty in education. Trusting our teachers is an essential component of educational excellence. Or destroying politely. Okay.
So I don't know if do we need to have a relation to the student for them to request review of material?
We took that off.
'Cause it's in the public.
We felt like-
Yeah. Okay. So that was intentional. It's not like it was missing.
I mean, what we talked about is if there's something that's concerning,
Right.
it's concerning, so.
Right. Because this is used for everything.
But within the policy though, basically anyone can challenge curriculum.
Right.
Because that's what the law states.
Right.
So anyone doesn't have to have a student in the district.
Right.
So that's why we took it off of.
Yeah. No, that makes
And
sense. I just
We
wanted.
talked a ton about, like with the open enrollment laws now.
Right.
You can't put district, resident, I
Right.
mean, you just have, the other piece of this different, that's why we did two different forms. So for the policy 2500, what's the verbiage, obscene materials, that is specific to a parent. So we delineated that out. So we took off that piece with this because there's too many open enrollment situations and grant, like, we're just like,
But you just took out because it doesn't really matter on their ability to
Right.
to make the
Well,
request. So
It actually matters because the law says that anybody can. So we have to.
But I mean, like
language-
actually having that box to check, it doesn't really matter.
I feel like we
for,
have had
for
community
that
members
anyway.
that aren't connected that have brought up stuff that
Right.
was super concerning, and every single one of us felt like it needed to be removed
Right.
if there was a question. So if it's concerning, it's concerning.
Yeah. And again, that's what the law requires us
Right.
of us. So.
Okay. No, that's perfect. It makes sense to take it off if it doesn't matter anyway. Then I mean,
Yeah, it's,
like it's not
kinda
needed,
tied.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. I don't see how every single worksheet or story or video could be approved.
such a waste of time and your time. We have to make our own worksheets or purchase them from Teachers Pay Teachers. There are so many educational videos we pull from YouTube to engage students. It often comes up the day of the lesson as we respond and adapt to the lesson. Okay, it would be such a waste of time for us to scan every book in our library or submit every piece. Okay, well, I hear you. There are some creepy weird stories that are not
That's just
appropriate for
interesting.
first
No,
grade.
what first grade?
The adoption failed us. Okay. I guess I'm not following.
I think they're just saying that the stuff they are given to teach is not what they.
And I would say we
like.
have
Yeah.
buildings that love what we have, we
Yeah.
have buildings that don't love what we have, we have, you know.
Well, like you said, there's so much curriculum out there that you can't find a one
and
fits all.
There isn't the ones, but I will say, we also then go even further in vet, so like, we went through every single story, are there stories that we feel like are just not age appropriate or,
Not
you know,
high quality.
or not high quality or whatever, and then we were like, okay, we're gonna do something different, and this is a good place to put a novel. I mean, we really do, I feel like, and obviously I'm biased because I run it, so, you know, I'm just putting that qualifier out there. I do feel like we try to do a really good job of putting the best things in front of kids, not just because it's something that we were given, if it's, you know, if we felt like the novel is a more authentic text, or we found a research or some type of article that better enhanced the learning. The goal is learning, it's not just about delivering.
Yeah, we teach
a
children,
present.
not the
Right,
textbook, so. Yep.
Anyways, but you can't please everybody, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely cannot.
Name down here in page 1 of whatever, however many. Okay. All right, so I think we can move on.
So, feels good to put that one to bed.
25.
But I do appreciate
20.
all the discussions
And
and
20, yeah.
listening. It's a lot of work,
Okay.
a lot of effort went into it with,
So, just
A lot of
one last
dedicated
question on
people.
this. When we take it to the board, do you want it to just be clean and say 25-20, and then we'll just give them context about the merging of, or do you want it to say formally known as?
Well, I think, and I guess in the,
We will discuss it, so.
yeah.
Can I-
Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying. I just have a question on it.
Yeah.
So on the learning materials portion, is there a documentation requirement? So like, hey, you know, we watched this YouTube video. Is there a requirement that they save what they used as learning materials in case it was questioned later? Is that, I'm just wondering, like, if it's something that, if that's a
Well, most
requirement.
of us have that either in our library already,
Okay.
or is something that would be very easily accessed. Most
Okay.
of us also post things to the Google Classroom, which is
Okay.
accessible, and I don't know if how we want to do that moving forward, if we open that up to parents so that they can also be part of the Google Classroom, if that's something that's gonna make.
I
them
was
feel
only thinking like if it was something that was like brought up as
I just feel like the
on
kids,
the
they'd see it
form.
and they would call and say, yeah, we were given this, and.
Okay.
So I guess where you're asking about it, and I could be totally wrong, is basically on the form. If a kid comes home and says, hey, I had to watch this,
Yeah.
and there's no resource for the parent to actually see what the kiddo watched.
Yeah. Like, do they have to save, like, and then they're like, oh, I can't remember where I found that, you know, not that I
Right.
think that's what really happens, but is there
Send me an
any?
email, I'll send you a
Yes,
link.
that's all I wondered, like,
I
do
think it
they
would
have
just
to,
be
like,
an email and context, and can I talk to my kids, and then the teacher would provide whatever.
the
that
link or
was.
whatever it
Yeah.
was, okay,
Yeah.
very good.
And
It's
then
all
also-
in their lesson plans.
Also in
Okay.
there, we've identified that anything that's more than 5 minutes, we're notifying parents that we're showing it, so, and then with the link, and then they can go watch it, so.
I'm just wondering, do you want that to be 25-20 and you take out the formally now and we just give context, or do you want it to go to the board like?
We'd have to fill out the movie form.
Unless it
if
came
it's,
with the
if it's like a
curriculum.
documentary and it's not rated or whatever,
And then
then
you and I
you
can-
just let them
Well,
know,
you-
just like you would a
But to my
GED.
principal,
We can tag
And
you.
parents.
Used to-
but to my principal, I would have to fill
Well-
out the movie request form. And let parents know, regardless if it's rated or not rated.
Okay.
We just have to follow the movie policy.
What I would recommend is that we give policy 2540 alongside 2520
so that
And
if anybody wants
25-30.
to, yeah, if they
So
can
all
look at
three.
them all, yeah,
I like that.
and just note that they've been merged into one policy now.
Okay.
Alright, so service animals in school.
The one we thought might be easy and then found it wasn't. We started this.
No, didn't we
Well,
think the
it's-
vehicle one we thought was
Yeah,
gonna be
that's the
easy?
vehicle one.
Oh, was
The
it
vehicle
Yeah,
one.
it was the vehicle one.
Well, I remember going through this one too, 'cause I was
This-
looking things up.
There's just a lot of new added language
Um,
from ISBA.
But see, I don't know, where's, I don't know if it's new language, the reason being, no, it's not. Cause when we looked at this
Being new to
policy,
us.
no, 2021,
Uh-huh.
okay. When we looked at this, policy, what's harder? We revised it on 2021, we did not have this language.
Was this carryover from when we talked about having other animals that weren't service animals? Because that was pretty recent. We talked about some of that.
No, back in the day, when it was just myself and Trustee Grissom on the policy committee, and the previous clerk of, one of the previous clerks of the board, we went through this kind of at length and found that a lot of the language that ISBA was using just was not necessary. So we shrunk it down, and now it grew again, so.
Miniature horse?
Yep.
Well, then we really wanted to check some of the
Can you imagine
requirements
trying to
because
teach a class?
the struggle
with
a little
miniature
bit
horse?
is
Just
about.
Airlines are required to allow them on too.
What are?
Airlines have to
Oh.
let miniature horses on.
They have to be,
Cool.
they have to be housebroken. That's one of
But
the.
they can't fit under the thingy.
No, they get to be in the plane with the person.
Do you get a their own seat?
I don't know.
Yes, they do.
They have to sit.
Oh my goodness. That would
But
be
some
fun
of
to
our
see.
concern was just really trying to get in the weeds with the law about the requirements of like, are we allowed to require vaccinations? Are we allowed to then have them show us what those vaccinations are? Because you just have all these allergies, I mean, there's just so many.
Right.
And I get that, we're required, but then how do you protect? So we had lots of
Right.
conversations way back when about the law and what we're allowed to, what we're not allowed to, and
Right.
all those pieces, so.
And the unfortunate, fortunate, however you want to look at it, is that the person with a disability trumps someone with an allergy.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we have to accommodate both, the person with the allergy then has to be removed and gone somewhere else, which I don't necessarily think is appropriate, but that's the way
That's the law,
everything's
yeah.
designed. So, let's see here. Looks like these are parallel paragraphs to some degree. Board of Trustees acknowledges its responsibility to permit students and or adults with disabilities as required by the, okay, to be accompanied by service animal on district premises or at district-sponsored activities. Okey doke. Up here, to be accompanied by a service animal in its school buildings, in classrooms, and at school functions. Do we need to expand on district premises or at district-sponsored activities? Okay. Service animal refers to any dog or miniature horse that is individually trained to do work, perform tasks for the benefit of someone with a disability as defined. Emotional support, well-being, comfort, or companionship does not, animals.
No, it's not animals. It's that those statements don't constitute work or tasks for the purpose of this definition. So a service animal doesn't provide emotional support. A service animal doesn't provide well-being, comfort, or companionship. Those aren't the work or tasks that a service animal does, and that's straight out of the law.
Oh, I get what it's saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Any use of a service animal shall be subject to the following. When it is not readily apparent what service the animal provides, staff may inquire whether the service animal is required for the individual with a disability and may inquire about the work or task the animal has been trained to perform. Okay.
That's kind kind of, that is by,
That
that's
is
the
by-
law.
that's by law, I
And
know.
it's really all you can ask.
That's it.
So like no doctors, no.
Mm-mm.
Can, instead of inquire, can we say ask?
Sure.
Okay. And it's a fancy word. Let's just make it simple.
Quick question, does the person have to have a documented disability of some kind?
They don't have to provide it, they just
They're
have to.
supposed to, but you can't ask them to show it.
So they don't have to bring in proof that there is a disability, and they don't have to bring in proof that the animal provides a service for that disability that they did not provide proof for.
Correct.
Despite
But
actually being
they-
required to have it. So they're required to have it, but you're not allowed to verify it.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the law.
What's a better way to
But
say that?
but we can ask them what task or work has this animal been trained to perform, and they need to be able to tell us that, because if
Well,
what
sure,
if
they'll
their
tell us.
response to it is emotional support,
Well, then
then
I'm
we
gonna say
can
that.
say, well, they might if they don't really
They
know
didn't
the
read
law.
So I don't have to prove anything to have a mini horse.
No.
I don't have to. Game on.
Who's cleaning up after the animal?
No, but it specifically says in the
Trained.
law that
Love
the
to
miniature
say
horse
it's
must
not
be
being
housebroken,
Amy.
potty
It
trained.
just
Or
doesn't seem
diapered.
right that there's-
I don't know how you do that. I have no idea. You're a horse person. How do you potty train a
You
horse?
put a horse diaper?
I know
Yeah.
I said we need to find out about the vaccination, because I do believe we are allowed to ask if the animal is vaccinated.
I did ask and the answer was no.
Does not seem right. The service animal must harness.
I mean, they are required to have them vaccinated, but we cannot ask for the documentation.
That just doesn't seem. Owners of a service animal are liable for any harm or injury caused by the animal to other students. The district is not responsible for the care or supervision of a service animal. Issues related to the care and supervision of service animals will be addressed on a case-by-case basis.
I'm just trying to figure out where the mini horse came in.
Service animal will
In
be
the law, old
licensed
school.
and
Well,
vaccinated for rabies per county
because like if you have a
requirements.
mobility issue and that's the only way you can get around.
Okay, so
Yeah.
here's the thing, if the service animal must be licensed and vaccinated for rabies per county requirements, we should be able to ask for that proof, and I think we can.
Megan said that the law says that we cannot ask, the only thing we can ask about is what task has this animal been trained to perform? Or what work does this
Because even
animal
dog
do?
owners can ask for proof of vaccination.
Right, that's, yeah, that was her response back.
We
to-
require more actually about the students.
Hmm?
That we require more documentation for the students.
Right,
Mhm,
right.
yeah. One of the things that's in the law that we're not identifying here, maybe it's later, is that the school has to identify where the animal's gonna go potty, and then the family's required to clean that up. That is in the law.
Okay, so then these are ours and these are ISBA's, so let's read through theirs. The animal must be required for the individual with a disability.
But we don't give her.
The animal must be a dog or in specific circumstances a miniature horse. No other species of animals, whether wild or domestic, will be permitted in schools as a service animal.
Does it define the specific circumstances?
What says it must, oh.
Possible categories of possible uses, a lot of possibilities here. A member of the public who visits the district property may be accompanied by a service animal. Staff may ask the following questions only about the service animal if the answers are not obvious. Is this a service animal required because of a disability, and what work or task has the animal been trained to perform? Staff
This is where it says you can't ask.
cannot ask about the person's disability, require medical documentation, require a special identification card or training documentation for the animal, or ask that the dog demonstrate its ability to perform the work or task. We'll see, now we're excluding the horse. Any students who seek to be accompanied by a service animal, including a service dog in training addressed below, while on school property, shall have such requested such request addressed via section 504 plan. Okay, so that's not in our policy. We do need to have that. I'm gonna highlight this just because what happened. Okay.
And in a 504 plan, you
Within a
have to
504 plan, you
delineate
have
what
it.
the disability is.
Yeah.
Which you would need then proof to write a 504.
Mm-hmm.
All
And-
plans
and
shall be
health
prepared in
plan.
accordance with the standard policy
There you go.
in conjunction with the student's parent.
Yeah, so it all
Shall be
it's all
the
contradictory.
responsibility of the parent, legal guardian to contact the school to commence this process.
Well, this isn't per se the law, this is ISBA's recommendation, so, I mean,
Right,
technically, but I think that's why
but-
Michelle's highlighting this, we're saying if you're doing that, we want a 504 to accompany this, but the law doesn't say you have to have a 504.
Mhm.
That's ISBA's recommendation.
Well, yeah, and I totally agree with that. It's just that which trumps what? Like,
Well, I think if we put it in our policy,
Yeah,
it's in our
right.
policy,
Mhm.
yeah.
And if we are gonna write a 504, then we follow our 504 procedures.
Yeah, exactly.
Any employee who seeks to be accompanied by a service animal while on school property shall contact the district's human relations director.
And should be resources for us, but human resource director.
And shall work through the Americans with Disability Act's process with the district. Requests to permit a miniature horse to accompany a student or adult with a disability in school buildings and classrooms or at school functions will be handled on a case-by-case basis, considering the type, size, and weight of the miniature horse, and whether the facility can accommodate these features, whether the handler has sufficient control of the miniature horse, whether the miniature horse is housebroken, and whether the miniature horse's presence in a specific facility compromises legitimate safety requirements that are necessary for safe operation.
Doesn't say anything about whether or not it completely disrupts the learning for kids all day long.
How does the horse get there?
I don't
If the kid
even
rides the
understand.
bus, does the horse have to ride the bus?
Yeah.
Service animals must provide
Can
proof of
miniature
current
horses be
vaccination
big
to
enough that I can
superintendent.
ride it?
See right here, it
if
says
you're
upon
kindergarten.
request,
Kindergarten.
owners of service animals must provide proof of current vaccinations to the superintendent with their request to be accompanied by the service animal.
Yeah, so
So-
Megan's response was
Incorrect.
yep, opposite of what
So I'd like to
ISBA
find
tells us.
out,
So would you like me to send this draft to, Amy White?
Well, Amy helped
when
write it.
we're
So-
done with
When
it,
we're done with the
yeah.
policy.
Okay.
Is that taken directly out of the law?
No,
There
because
has
when
to
you
be
read the
something to
law, the
support
law
it.
doesn't say that you
Right.
can ask that question.
All service animals must be kept clean and groomed to minimize shedding and dander and must be treated for and kept free of fleas and ticks. Much appreciated. Owners of service animals are liable for any harm or injury caused by the animal to other students, visitors, or property. The service animal must have a harness, leash, or tether, or otherwise be under a, okay, so we copied that from up there. A service animal, here, let me just do this. Service animal must have a harness, leash, or other tether unless either the handler is unable because of a disability to use a harness or, okay, but
The way we wrote it was much simpler,
Yeah.
but I just captured both, just so.
no, that's fine. The school system is not responsible for the care or supervision of service animals, including walking the animal or responding to the animal's needs to relieve itself. The district is not responsible for providing a staff member to walk the service animal or to provide any other care or assistance to the animal. Students with service animals are expected to care for and supervise the animal. In the case of a young child or a student with disabilities who is unable to care for or supervise his or her service animal, the parent is responsible for providing care and supervision of the animal. Issues related to the care and supervision of service animals will be addressed on a case-by-case basis.
And at the discretion.
I think it's in slash out.
No.
No.
At the discretion.
Yeah. at the discretion of the building administrator. Student requests for service animal related accommodations will be reviewed based on the specific circumstances particular to the student in question and may be addressed in conjunction with a student's Section 504 plan or IEP. Okay, so now,
So we talk a lot about the liability, not being on the district, but what happens, like if a student is injured or an adult, but what happens if the animal is injured? Does it say anything about the injury of the animal? Did I miss that?
no, it doesn't, but all throughout this policy, the bottom line is the the liability of the animal lies on the person with the disability or their family member, their family, if they're a minor.
But I see what you're saying, because if something outside their control happens to the animal while it's on our property, like another kid does something
Right,
ridiculous.
I'm just thinking if there was a little person and, you know, just,
Well, if the horse is galloping around out on the playground and falls into a pothole, and breaks its leg, are we liable? I mean, I'm just saying, that's a scenario I can see. Or a dog, okay, we'll make it a dog.
I can see a kindergartner wanting to cut the tail.
Seriously, why is that kindergartner running around with scissors?
Well, they're not. They're just in the classroom with scissors. If
And
the
the
horse
horse
is
is
next to
standing
them.
next to him.
I think that's actually guaranteed to happen.
Yeah.
It'd be like it's like
It's
a
like when they
the
cut,
second
pull their
week
bangs
of
down,
January.
their bangs.
I mean, that's what I wasn't thinking of that
These are things
scenario.
that happen.
But I was just thinking about, you know, we've talked all about injury to the human, but what happens when there's an injury to the animal based on overstimulation or
Or it
the
gets
cutting of
colored.
scissors or
Glue.
It could be glued. It could.
I can see the glue more than
It
the
eats
scissors.
something.
Yeah, eat
That's
something
better.
from the floor.
Oh yeah. Or they get fed something.
Yeah.
or their kids.
He doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the.
So,
list.
under that actual
It
ADA
doesn't because
service
there's-
animal part, it says a public entity is not responsible for the care or supervision of a service animal. So that might be,
Yeah, and it
you're not
says-
responsible for the
yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Cause that whole section is the
Well, this
district's not
section-
responsible for the care of the animal.
Right.
And then
but
they
up
throw that
here,
in about then do
we
a-
talk about it too.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why we are,
And it doesn't fit down there, cause
and up
that,
here, we don't talk about the we don't talk about an IEP, it's just a 504 plan.
but, yeah, that just doesn't fit with that list. That list is about what we don't have to do to care for the animal, and then they throw in the request for an animal gets a 504, or it just doesn't even go there. It doesn't fit with with the rest of
So
it.
in the beginning, it said that you can only ask what work the animal has been trained to perform.
Right.
But the law says a public entity may ask if the animal is required because of a disability and what work.
Yeah, it's
There.
both
You're
those
allowed to
questions.
So
do
you
are
can
there.
do both, okay.
It's
But
right
does
there.
the law
Is
say
this a
anything
service-
about vaccines? What
No,
you're
but
saying.
I think
Right.
what where you might be over reading or under reading is we can ask, you know, is the animal required for a disability, but we can't ask what the disability
Right.
is.
Okay.
And those questions are right there, Lisa.
Yeah.
They're actually listed right there, 1 and 2.
Required.
Oh,
because
okay,
of a
perfect.
disability
Thank you.
and-
Sorry, I was reading in here and missed that one.
Nope.
No, we have,
I
But,
read
I
through
mean,
that
I
and I
think-
didn't find where it says you can ask about that.
theirs is
Before
more
IEP process.
detailed,
Mhm.
We're required to document that.
if it's
Right.
better, but.
Yep.
So it's the same
Yeah.
entity required.
So somehow we just have to
Other
merge.
than
I just
different
didn't feel like I
things.
could reflect ours and try to merge it, so.
Yep.
we
I
had
gotcha.
to just
I know.
look at it as all of it.
It's the workaround.
And this is the
Removal. Okay,
removal.
a school administrator may ask an individual with a disability or his or her parents to remove a service animal from a school building, a classroom, or from a school function if any of the following circumstances occur. The animal is out of control and the animal's handler does not take effective action to control it. The animal is not housebroken. The animal's presence would fundamentally alter the nature of the service, program, or activity. The animal presents a direct threat or unreasonable risk to the health and safety of students, staff, or individuals in the area.
And then I
These are
see
dicey
at
words.
5.
The
So-
animal's presence presents a direct threat to students, staff.
It was simpler the way ISB wrote it.
Oh, yeah. It presents a direct threat to students. well, it doesn't include the word unreasonable risk.
Yeah, it just takes out unreasonable
Um,
and in the area.
I'm just curious what the
Doesn't
direct
specify
threat
health and
is.
safety.
Who
Yeah,
determines that
allergies.
on top of it?
Yeah, but I
Not
mean, like,
according
it's,
to the attorney.
it's wide open there.
Yeah, because I mean, if a kid has allergies, we were told, will you move them to a different
Yeah.
section of the building?
My assumption is it would be an aggressive animal, but it's an assumption.
Right, that's the only thing I could think of, yeah.
Not direct
But
threat.
even, I do like unreasonable risk.
Unreasonable risk would accompany if you had a severe airborne allergy to an animal.
Not according to law. Not according to legal people. But these words, purely subjective, so I don't know what we're gonna do with those. If a service animal is excluded, the individual will be given the opportunity to participate in the district's activity or program without the service animal or in an alternative activity. Any student's request to be accompanied by a service dog in training shall be assessed on a case-by-case basis according to their disability that we're not allowed to ask. All right, non-disabled handlers accompanied by service dogs in training shall carry and, upon request, display an identification card issued by a recognized school for service dogs or organization that services individuals with disabilities. Disabled handlers shall have the right to be accompanied by a service dog in training for the purpose of training a district property without producing an identification card.
So 2 standards one for disabled and one for non-disabled.
Well, and this is also through the lens of the service dog and training. They haven't met whatever their.
Right, but this specifically says that if you don't have a disability, you
Right.
have to have that identification card and be able to give it, but if you
Yep.
do, you don't have to.
Are we required to do this though?
I think so, I believe that I looked that up and they.
Like, you're required to allow somebody who is not
Mhm.
disabled to have a
Train
service dog in training.
What is it?
Well, and it
training.
sounds like it would be, they're purposely putting it in a
Oh, I
school
see.
in that
situation
environment to train it for it.
Is it
Okay.
for that,
56-704B?
maybe for that student
Idaho code.
who is going to receive that animal.
That makes sense.
What was that
That
Idaho
would be
code?
what I
I'm
would
gonna look that one up.
The family has acquired a dog that is.
Yes, it was that
Or-
way. I
or-
just looked that up a minute
or
ago.
go through the whole family.
Right, but they.
56-704.
Training, now they've brought them into the family and they're.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need to look to see how is it going to be at school.
Every individual with a disability who is specifically trained or socializing a dog for the purpose of being a service dog shall have the right to be accompanied by the dog in any of the places described in section here. All common carriers, hotels, lodging houses, places of public accommodations, and other public places. Okay. To full and equal.
The general public is invited.
The general public invited to it, that's.
Yeah, I wouldn't read that as thinking that that was a classroom.
Or resort or other places to which the general public is invited, subject only to conditions and limitations established by law. Okay, I don't know that we're required.
School bus. School bus.
However, if you have that kiddo on a 504, perhaps that would warrant putting them on a special bus. That would, be a little less risk for the disruption of
Mhm.
a bus full of kids and a puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
You would have someone sitting with them.
Yes, yes.
Well, and also there's more adults on the special bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not all students that would have a disability would necessarily need to be on a special bus, would they? Or is that just an
Not necessarily.
implied?
That just, it might open up the ability to
But
write that
let's
into the
look at
plan.
3, the school or
right?
organization responsible for the dog and training shall be liable.
That's if
school
we
rights
are
under.
training us, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not, yeah, not the,
I'm
not
saying
the
No,
like
right,
if a
public.
yeah,
student's
I'm reading
blind
it
and has
that
a
way.
guide
Okay.
dog, but doesn't necessarily want to ride
Shall
a
in no
special
way
bus,
suffer
they want to ride a
liability for
regular bus,
damages, so
they
that's
can't be
good,
told they
even if it's a
can't.
dog in training.
So,
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
So I'd
Yeah.
really like to find out if,
so.
I
just
mean,
wonder
the only
if-
thing
if
I'm
they would be
thinking
able
is
to,
that
like-
because it says
like,
or any other place
We
of public
can't, because
accommodation.
the special bus is the only
I
one
mean,
that would have like
we're
an extra adult
required
with
to
them, and
provide
so
a
like,
free
oh, well, the only way we can
public
accommodate
Yeah, but it's
that
least
is-
restrictive environment.
I'd really like to know
So,
if we are
it doesn't
required
matter,
by
it's
law
least restrictive
to
environment is the regular ed
allow
bus with my dog.
To accommodate a dog
service
in
Yeah,
dogs
training.
in
yeah.
training.
The dog
Yep.
can be in class.
That
I
does
wrote that
kinda put
down,
you
so
over
when we
a barrel.
finalize this, that'll be one of my questions to Amy.
I mean, the only time I think that we might, I mean,
Well, so,
would be like with
I mean, cause here's the
kids
deal,
with
if a teacher gets a side gig and they're training service
diabetes.
animals, then those service animals get to come to school with them.
Yeah, those kids in the
Regardless.
same room because the dogs will overlap.
Well, we actually had
And
somebody
no,
ask that
that's-
question and I think we denied it.
That was therapy dogs.
So if you have a diabetic
I thought
dog
it
and
was-
I have
we
a
got
diabetic
service
dog,
line
we
too.
wouldn't be able to
So,
do it in
so
training, you'd have to be.
56, 701A defines, service dog and service dog and training.
Probably other kids that they didn't realize were diabetic.
Might actually diagnose.
We just need to know if we're required to accommodate it.
701 and 701A.
701A, yeah, under 701A2, dog in training means dog being specifically trained.
To develop social,
just based on where we're at,
environmental,
it's
or
like
other
health and
skills.
society.
So that's not just disability training, that's everything, that's
Sure.
therapy dog.
Well, this is, rights of individuals with disabilities, this is the statute that is, that policy's cross-referenced to.
Right, public assistance and welfare.
So it has the definitions. Oh, right there, rights of individuals with dogs in training.
We already
Did
looked
read
at
that
those
one?
two.
Okay.
Those are the 2 that Michelle pulled up.
So, yeah, I think it would be best if Amy White chimed in on this, if it's a
Okay.
requirement. Because it was my understanding that we could, to some degree, be subjective, that we didn't need to allow it. Especially given it could become disruptive. But I mean, again, if a student has a disability and they're obligated to train their dog.
But if
I
the
don't
disability
know
is something that could be serviced by something other than an animal, like for example, as opposed to a C9 dog, a cane.
Oh, this is from Megan, I just pulled up her email. Animals in training are not required but permissible at the discretion of board admin policy practices. That's from Megan. And then this was her other. No, we can't require proof of vaccinations. We've tried to include this in some procedures to ensure these animals are properly trained, but there's really no mechanism to require this information. That was her response.
Well, okay, so now we have dueling attorney responses.
Mhm.
So I think we need Megan, or not Megan, Amy to weigh in on where she can point us to support that we can ask for vaccinations. Because nothing down here supports that. My eyes are just twitching.
And nothing in, so that 5812B, that doesn't say anything about whether or not we have to require
That's a service dog in training.
58.
Well, you didn't copy the whole thing, you just have to add the 5. Michelle?
Gotcha.
I think this is just gonna be an overview of
You're right.
American Disability Act.
Okay, I don't wanna read all that.
I'll ask her
Us
when we
the
finalize
lawyer.
this, I'll send her the whole policy and then highlight those 2 sections.
Okay, under the 2010 ADA Title II regulations, a service animal is defined to mean any dog that has been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability, including a physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or other mental disability. Service animals are defined as dogs that are individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. Okay.
Dogs or miniature horses?
Well, then it mentions miniature
Examples of
horses.
such
Yeah.
work or tasks. Why are we getting
This was
these
our
definitions?
old, that was our
I
old
know.
language, so.
Examples of such work or tasks include guiding people who are blind, alerting people who are deaf, pulling a wheelchair, alerting and protecting a person who is having a seizure, reminding a person with mental illness to take prescribed medications, calming a person with PTSD during an anxiety attacks, or performing other duties. Service animals are working animals, not pets. The work or task a dog has been trained to provide must be directly related to the person's disability. Dogs whose sole function is to provide comfort or emotional support do not qualify. Note that other species of animals, whether wild or domestic, trained or untrained, are not service animals for the purpose. Okay, so this is partly up there.
Yeah.
Okay, miniature horses, although not included in the definition of service animals, are protected. Okay. On district premise or at district, okay, shall include but not be limited to buildings, facilities, or grounds on the district campus, school buses, district parking area, and other location, and the location of the district sponsored activity. This includes instances in which the conduct occurs off the district premise but impacts a district related activity.
It's an away football game.
Right.
So it's a lot of redundancy between ours, and we just have to decide which
Yeah.
verbiage we like. I don't know why the formatting changed. on
I
that.
feel like ours old one is wordy. There's just a lot of words.
Is there anything about the individual or the family having to provide advance notice that they're bringing a service animal? Like, is that, I mean, or they just show up one day and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this kiddo was showing up to my third
Well, I
grade class
think
with a dog.
The policy adding that it has to funnel through a 504 and IEP gives us that time frame, but I don't think that there is any timeline. I mean, I think.
So we can keep that 504 thing on there, because it sounded like we were maybe on the fence about.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it definitely
yeah.
like
But I mean,
makes sense if
if a student has certain requirements,
Yeah,
we
that-
have to go through that 504.
If there's a if there's a disability that requires an accommodation, we
have to.
we document it in the 504 so that all teachers and everybody's on this, they're all on the same page, so.
But you also can't keep them out of school until that's done.
Well, I
No.
was gonna say where it gets sticky is that time frame. If
Yeah.
we needed a little bit of time to.
Accommodate,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, and also to find out, because if they are put in a classroom with a kid who either has a severe phobia or a severe allergy or severe anything, that kid, well, no, the kid would have to be moved.
Right.
So either way, we'd still have
But
to know
some
that.
of the logistical things, so.
So, or the teacher. What if the teacher
But there's
has
not
the
any
same issue?
requirement that they give notice to be able to figure that. They can just show up, here's me and my dog, this
Not
is.
per the law.
me, my
but
horse.
So the
I think
question
we
I
can
would have
put-
is the policy.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
if we write it in the policy, which is why I feel like we put that piece of the 504, because then it gives us an opportunity to ensure that we're implementing this in a really safe way for all parties.
Right.
Including the child with the disability, that's the
Right.
goal. Because to just show up cold turkey, that then everybody's, because we haven't designated a spot where they would go to the bathroom, there's
Right.
been no plan, so But I don't think the law, puts a timeline in there,
Okay.
that's our recommendation, and I feel like I'd wanna ask Amy that question. It's in our policy, and we're not doing anything that's against the law, but this is above and beyond the law, which
Yeah.
we are allowed to do.
Yeah.
So the 504 would give us a timeline, and it would have to be implemented in a reasonable, it can't take weeks.
Right.
Right.
I guess what are some of the contingencies, however, then for kids that would have to be removed? But I would more so at the elementary level. I think for the secondary we have a little more flexibility, but at the elementary level, let's say you have a kid that's bringing in a service animal and there's 5 kids in that classroom that can't be in that room with that service animal. Now those 5 kids need to be removed and put somewhere else.
Well, I guess from my perspective
Do we make
is the only
exchanges?
time that is an issue is if it's mid-year and then the kid is coming with a now I have a service animal.
Right.
A new situation, you're going to place them in
Minimize
a,
that.
you're gonna place them somewhere where that's a non-issue. The only time it would be an issue.
But you would have to know all of the issues from all the other students before you could make that determination.
Right.
So you'd have to survey the 75 first graders to say, do you have any allergies?
Part of that
and-
registration is that we ask those are there allergies? So we,
Yeah, but I wouldn't answer necessarily yes to an allergy if I didn't assume, I would make the assumption there's not gonna be a dog in the classroom, so why would I say yes, my kid's allergic to dogs?
That's true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that opens up a whole different can, because like I know when I get the things like, oh, allergic to bees, well, I don't have to worry about that when we're outside, but if there's gonna be a dog or
Yeah.
a miniature horse, which I would assume would be in the classroom with my child who has severe allergies to animals, and I know a lot of these are now like hypoallergenic animals, so I don't think it's that big a deal. I'm just trying to look ahead to say,
Yeah.
Not the
Michelle,
labs.
huh?
Labs are
Can
good.
you multitask and I ask? Okay, I'll
They're not
go
going,
ahead.
well, could they,
I was
like a
gonna say,
labradoodle?
didn't we ask this
Yeah,
question
that's
before? What is the communication to the parents in that class? Were we allowed to send something out? We
Nope.
couldn't.
We can't.
That's what I thought.
Let the stories get all.
Could we ask our kids, anyone allergic to
So the kid just like all of a sudden goes into anaphylaxis and the parents like, no, nobody told me, sorry, we couldn't. Like,
Can we,
what?
is this a question when you sign up and
Wild.
register to go to school, can you add a question, do you have a service animal? In that,
That's a good.
I think we could.
And I think we also have the question, in the event that there's a service animal in the classroom, does your child have any allergies?
There is
That we
on the
should-
registration a thing about if your child requires accommodations, right? Or is that only if you're doing a
But to
transfer?
her point would be, you're not gonna assume a parent it's not intuitive that it could be an animal like a dog or a.
No, but but you would have a heads up that the student requires an accommodation, like as far as notice that they
Yes.
might be bringing a service. That's already
But I
on the
think
registration,
what Nate is
right?
saying is, would we expand that and just say, would your child need accommodation and or,
a service animal?
is a service animal required, yes or no?
Yeah.
And then our question would be, if your child is in a room with a service animal, do they have any allergies that we need to be aware of? Because if we're trying to build rosters ahead of the school year,
Yeah.
and 5 kids answer, yes, I'm severely allergic to dander or whatever, then they would need to be put in a different
Yeah.
classroom, and so
we
those
can
rosters.
put on there, to Nate's point, service animal required, ask the question under the accommodation tab.
Yeah.
And then asking if there was a service animal in the classroom.
Yeah.
Are
That
there
would at
any
least give you
allergies
some
we need to be
advance
aware
of
of?
like, hey, we
Right.
gotta get
When I
our
was
act
shopping,
together.
I'm like, how does a horse get across there?
Conflicting.
Conflicting because
That'd be quite
the
simple.
language in
I'd like to know in
process
advance if there's
that
gonna
you
be a
may
horse in
ask
my class.
I would like to be the
for
one
certain
on one with that
information
student,
using
please.
2 questions or 2 varieties
You want me to
and
one
then
on
you're
one
not
with your
allowed
horse?
to request any documentation that the dog is
Is
registered, licensed, or certified.
Allergies considered a
So
disability?
I think Megan's looking
Are
at this and
allergies
saying we
If
can
I was
ask
asked,
these
you
2
could have
questions.
service animals,
And
but
Amy's
someone
looking
has
at this and
severe
saying, well,
nut
it doesn't
allergies.
specifically say we
That
can
animal
ask about
is trained
vaccinations.
to know if that's a safe space to
So,
go into, but the child's
I think that
diagnosis
they're
wouldn't
just-
Well, no,
be
there
a
is
disability.
actually somewhere
It's
in there,
Yeah,
because I
allergic
did
to all
read
kinds
it,
of things, but
which is why I
believe it's a
challenged Megan.
disability.
Right, that's what I'm saying, I
That
would
states
consider
if the
this
county
severe
requires
nut
licensure and
allergies,
vaccination
like that
and proof
anaphylactic
of
allergy.
Oh, right here.
But there are animals that are
Can require
trained.
service dogs to be
to
licensed
identify
and
that so that
vaccinated
Child would know not to go into
if
that
all
space,
dogs
those
are
kind of
required
things.
to be licensed
And
and
if- I would
vaccinated.
be-
Right.
I guess
Service
I
animal.
would say that
So
we would.
if that is a
We
requirement
would
within the
allow that, I
county,
mean, mean, if
Or
it's
the
that
s-
bad of
which-
an
Well,
allergy.
disability
The city,
is a
I believe,
health
requires
thing.
that.
Right, it would
then
have to be
we
something that
should
there's
be
a, but
allowed
if
to
there's a
ask for
potential
that proof that
anaphylaxis,
they
it would be
have
the same
met
as
the
a
needs
diabetic
of
and
the
or a
city.
seizure.
Right,
As
long
as
all
if
dogs
you're
are
gonna
required.
have
Right,
that
yep,
serious
right.
of a
So that's
response,
why, I mean,
Yeah.
that's, cause I did challenge
it's
Megan on that, and
airborne,
she was like, oh, well,
I mean, I would
you know,
think we'd wanna
it's,
accommodate that.
it's a thing, so.
I would think that they would
I'd actually probably never
So
take
if
it out of
we,
the house
at
if
the
that was the
start,
case,
just
'cause
state,
there's
any
hair
person
everywhere.
requiring a
I wouldn't
service
want my kid to
animal
leave my house
must
and be in a
inform the
bubble.
district prior to attending school with
That'd be scary if it
service
was
animal.
airborne.
You'd have to
Okay.
though, you'd have to have a 504 because you'd have to have an EpiPen on
Yep.
the premises, so you
Well,
would
that's
have to
why
do
it
that.
just makes
Right.
sense that you would have
Ensures the
a
district
504 or
has
an
the
I just think there's a
ICD.
broader
accommodate
spectrum
the
of what a
needs
service animal for
Yeah.
is than just.
Yeah, that's a good.
of the student with a disability.
Like they're
Which,
for medical.
I mean, it goes
still
beyond that,
puts out
but
a 504
I don't
piece,
get too
but
wordy, cause
You
then.
can't do that. So
And
they're-
this is supposed to be all about the person with the disability,
Yeah,
not
I mean,
everybody
they
else,
train
so.
pretty amazing.
But
Just-
you can't just show up with it.
Exactly.
One more question, so are you both comfortable, we talked about this in registration, where the part where it says is an accommodation needed for your child, we just add the language is a service animal needed for your child, or we can wordsmith that, but something on registration. And then just putting the qualifier, any allergies or conflict if there's a service animal. I mean, we can wordsmith that, but to everybody, just asking that question, cause it would be nice to know.
Right.
Again, it's not intuitive that you're talking about a dog, so they wouldn't necessarily
Yeah, most kids are,
name
most
that
parents are
as an
thinking
allergy.
boots.
But as like if in the intake, knowing that if we did have a child coming with a service animal, that we are definitely looking at those sheets for the rest of the kids of like, do we know, is that, if we
Well,
can't
if
send
you
out
get a-
communication, then
Right.
noting that there's a dog allergy and it's pretty severe, it's an airborne allergy, whatever.
Right,
If we put it in registration, we just ask the question, it's generic to everyone.
right. I think that would be.
Yeah, we can wordsmith how we ask
Yeah.
that, but those two questions.
I
Well,
think
I
if
think you
you're,
need-
sorry,
oh,
go ahead. Nope.
I think you need to keep accommodations
Mhm.
and then.
Right, we said add in
2
addition
or
to,
3,
yeah,
4, I mean, because not everybody thinks outside of
right.
the box.
Right,
Yeah.
and if we're going to ask the question, under accommodations, does your child have or require a service animal? I think we need to
Put the
put
law.
the definition of that, or at least the what it isn't, so that we don't get a bunch of emotional support animals.
Legally, does your child
Nobody's-
legally require
You're
a
right.
service
We're guinea
animal?
pigs.
Or a service animal as defined by
Right,
80,
I would put the
28.
law,
Yeah.
yeah, I would actually not just, I would name the law and then I would write
Put
the
the wordage.
context,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
But I think you need to say emotional support does not constitute, because people have been trying to get emotional
Oh, yeah.
support animals in, and so I think we just need
So
to
we
nip
could
that.
probably
out of
add this now, recognizing that we do have
Register.
some people that have already registered, so not everybody will have that opportunity. Cause if we start a registration in May, so.
Are you sending an email out?
Yep.
Just curious.
FYI, I will be coming with a horse, and it's potty trained. And I wanna sit down and talk to that person and understand how you go about doing that.
There was a really cute movie.
Okay.
Just so I
like
can recap
Apple-
really
Apple
fast for
and
everybody, so
Apple
2520, 2520F is gonna go to the board. When we finalize this one, we will take it to the attorney, and then we have a few questions that we're asking. And then we are gonna add 2520 to the very beginning of the admin, what admin is required to go over with staff, and then we will discuss it with staff in our curriculum groups and or all staff to just give context, so.
Make
That's
sure
our
it's
summary.
part of the, welcome back.
It's a good.
So we will go ahead and end the committee at
Welcome back, we just
6:20.
left.
Well, I've already